Okay.
Hi guys, welcome to attend the EY auditing webinar. Today, David will give more information about what is audit and how it works during big company firms such as EY. He is auditor associate in EY and he is our UTAS graduate. So if you are considering a career in auditing, he will be discuss more information to you, and we will have quick questions and answer in the afterwards. So shall we? Let's begin.
Yep, sounds good. So hey guys, as Ron Nichols was discussing, so my name's David. I studied at UTAS in 2000, I think maybe 16 to 2019. I was part of Tubes when I was there. I was one of the vice presidents there. So I finished in 2019. I'm Australian and was born in Tasmania. Finished 2019. I realized I wanted to go work for like some of the bigger companies and move to Sydney for a bit because I've been in Hobart my life. So I applied for a couple of grad programs and I got into a graduate program for an ASX company, so not EY. Moved to Melbourne, worked there for 1 year, moved to Sydney for like the second part of my grad program. So in that time I started off doing management accounting. I did some FP&A work. I did some analytics work as there. And after that, I finished up. So I spent my first company at Downer for about 2.5 years. And after that, I moved to EY into the audit team there. I've been working in audit for about almost 2 years now. So I'm currently just one of the associates there, but probably will be the senior accountant fairly soon, I reckon. And yeah, like as I said, I work in Sydney and just happy to chat about what I do, what I work in audit and what it's like working for EY, which is one of the really big audit firms and accounting companies in globally. So yeah, happy to tell you what I do in a day to day or what it's like working at accounting or what I actually do as an auditor or what even is audit. But yeah, just feel free to ask me any questions or anything like that. So yeah, that's my background.
I'll go ahead and ask the first question then. I don't know much about auditing. So I guess what is it and what are the kinds of things that you do?
Yeah, okay. So audit's all about checking the financial statements of companies and making sure we understand how it works and also giving the companies and anyone assurance of how the number actually is. So when you look at a financial statement, you've got, income statement, balance sheet. If the balance sheet says you've got $1,000 in cash, how do you check that? Like, how do you know how does the company know that the amounts are actually there? So of course they'll have in their accounting system will say $1,000, but how do we verify that? And for something like a bank confirmation, a bank account, it's pretty easy to check. So you just normally send something called a bank confirmation to the bank, who will say, yes, we can confirm that this company has X amount of accounts with this much dollars at this point in time. And if that all agrees into the bank statement, then we're good. We've checked off that account. And we go do that for not every account of the company, but all the accounts that we set up when we do our audit strategy, we test certain accounts. So we know that, okay, we need to test cash. For example, that company says they made $2,000 in sales. How do we verify that? Okay, we can't. Okay, so what we might do is we get the list of transactions that make up the $2,000. So there might be 4 transactions for $500 each, and we might select one of those for testing. Say, okay, so of this $2,000, one of the transactions is $500. How do we test that this $500 is a legit transaction? So we'll select that for testing. We'll say, oh, we got an invoice for $500 to X customer X, and then we also received the bank payment showing that this $500 was actually paid. So we can say, oh, okay, yes, this $500 transaction is real, and based on statistics, we've now tested 25% of the population, so we can say that we've got a reasonable amount of assurance that this revenue is real, and then we can tick it off and move to the next account. So that's what auditing is. We're just going through and checking stuff, which means you have to understand how it works as well. That revenue example is really simple there, but when you've got lots of other interesting accounts as well, like expenses, accruals, payables, receivables, etc., etc. And obviously, the big companies you work on, you have more stuff going on. So that sort of in a nutshell, Chloe, is what we do in audit. So just making sure we have to verify things, and to verify things, we have to understand it. So that's why auditing is a good place to start if you want to work in accounting, because you have to understand how the business works.
Thank you, David. I would like to ask what type of companies are generally audited normally?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. They're all good questions, but so for me, my specialties lie on really big US companies. So, for example, I work on the Coca-Cola audit. So that's one of like, it's a massive international company, and we just work on the Australian component of it. So in terms of audits, you've got your things such as PIEs, which are public interest entities, which is anything on the ASX or globally listed. So like massive companies where you've got public shareholders. You've also got private companies as well, which aren't listed on the ASX, but are still really big. Yeah, there's lots of private companies that are still really big, but aren't listed on the ASX for whatever reasons. And then you've also got smaller companies and charities as well. So you've got the whole range. Generally at EY, we're looking at the bigger companies because Big Four is a Big Four auditor. Where we look to provide a high level of quality, but also it's generally more expensive. So generally our clients will be of a bigger size than say a smaller accounting firm. But yeah, we do non-profits. We do football clubs as well. For example, we do the Western Sydney Wanderers audit. And yeah, the whole range of things.
Yeah, that's exciting because you can dealing with lots of big companies and you can learn more about their industry. And
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, do you know how long does an audit project normally take?
It depends on the size of the audit. So for something like in the work you do as well. So for generally an audit will probably last about maybe 6 weeks in terms of like the process where you're sending out the sample, you're sending out a request to the client to provide support for this, or that. Um, or yeah, so generally about 6 weeks, and it also depends on how many people you have on the team. So generally, um, like for me and all the other accountants will work on a job for six weeks, and then we'll do something else. So you do 6 weeks here, you do 6 weeks there. So around about yeah, I think 6 weeks. Yeah.
Hi Dave, I've got a question.
Yeah.
When you're auditing the company, um, do you identify any weakness of their internal controls?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's something that we do when we do our controls testing. So like I said, my specialty, I suppose, or the thing I work on the most is because I work on the really big clients. Um, and the thing is, when you're doing an auditing approach, you can either do a controls testing approach where you rely on the controls and you take smaller samples because when you rely on the controls, you're relying on the internal controls of the company, which means that their IT system is good. So they're using something like a SAP system. Um, as opposed to if you do all your accounting in Excel, you can't have a controlled reliance approach, which means you need to take more samples because it's not designed for accounting. It will make sense for if you just got a little business probably, but if you got a really big business, then you need to have a proper like accounting software. So to have a controlled reliance approach, which means you take less samples, you need to have a good IT system. The staff has to be pretty competent. So that means you normally want to see like someone in the CFO role and not just anyone. Normally they have got to have, X amount of years experience. Just, you need to like build up to a level where you can say we have controls reliance. Once we have controls reliance, then we have to test the controls, as you mentioned. So that's going through and saying, oh, okay, this control is supposed to prevent fraud across the trade receivables. So people aren't making imaginary companies, imaginary companies which we can pay. And so when we're testing this sort of, say, accounts receivable control, we're making sure is the person who's checking the work of the person doing the accounts receivable, does the accounting system have an automatic thing in place to stop just making, imaginary companies? So that's what sort of controls testing is about.
And then when you identify some weakness of the internal control in a certain section, do you guys recommend how to improve on the procedure, or it's not the job for external auditor? Or
Yes, we do both because say for a big client, they normally have an internal controls team and we'll say this control doesn't seem to be working because of this, and we can propose something, or they can be like, we can propose a solution, and sometimes they'll be like, yes, that makes sense, let's do it. Or they could be like, no, what you're proposing is impossible, but let's try and do it another way. So we're proposing things, but ultimately it is the responsibility of internal management to prove that controls are working. If the controls aren't working, so we're failing controls and internal controls can't provide a solution by the time we're trying to do the audit, we'll have to do a non-controls reliance support approach, which is substantive approach, where we're doing a lot more samples, because we don't have that controls for lines. So ideally, everyone wants to have controls for lines, because then it's less samples and less work. But just because we want it doesn't mean we can do it as well.
Thank you.
May I ask you what is a career in auditing can go further? Like for all graduates, they would like to take the first step as the auditing, what they can go further.
Yep. Okay. So auditing is known as a bit of a springboard career, which, I mean, it's good and bad. So a lot of people start out in audit, and then and obviously not everyone can be an audit partner or wants to do it, because it's obviously you have to work a lot to get there. But so obviously you can keep on going up to audit, but it's quite common for people to move into, say, consulting or transaction advisory. But probably the most common pathway is you do audit, but you don't want to do it till you get to partner. You go into finance as a finance manager role, or a financial accountant role somewhere. So, for example, quite likely career for me, I think, is if by the time I get to maybe, say, senior accountant or manager, I would decide, you know what, audit's not for me. I might go to try and join like a Woolworths, and I should be able to get a financial accounting job there pretty easily. So obviously in the accounting space is the easiest move, but you can also move to other areas as well. Because in the end, it's all about understanding the financials of the business. Yeah, it's probably the easiest way to put it.
What do you think the benefits of auditing for you? Like, what do you think is gain your more ability and to gain the ability to cooperate with others, or gain the ability to help you to enhance your personality?
In terms of a skill set, so I mean, I feel like this is something about any job, but everyone always wants the sort of things like attention to detail, communication skills, etc. And I don't think audit's really any different from that point of view. I do think one benefit of really working in audit is you have to go into the accounts and you have to understand things. I know my previous role is in management accounting. It's sort of like in auditing, the skill sets you're building is you're understanding the accounts and you're understanding how the transactions work. So you really do understand how financial and accounting works because of the work we do. Whereas something they say like management accounting, it's if you start in management accounting, you're doing things in forecasting and financial modeling and all those sort of pieces, but you're probably not going into the technical detail. So it's like, there's pros and cons to anything, and that's what auditing is. So in auditing, your Excel isn't much more than lookups, sum ifs, and pivot tables, where you're not really doing like really complex models, I think.
Thank you, David. You explained a lot of questions to us, and it gave us more deep understanding of auditing. So, do we have any roommates want to ask the question about the auditing?
David, you said you had a couple of graduate programs, and then
Yes.
did you get any training for auditing when you're doing that?
Yeah, so that's probably one of the good things about audit is you don't need to have a degree in accounting or finance. You just need to have a degree, I think, to apply for EY. So I know that one of my friends, he had a degree in archaeology, and one of the interns that was currently working for me, he had a degree in actually the recent graduate who joined our team, he had a degree in like teaching, I think. So the good thing is you're not expected to have the technical skill set when you come into EY. I think, and the good thing is you do so much on the job training here, like it's inherent in the way EY functions, and probably EY functions at least, is that if you have to show the people who are working in your team, like sort of below you, how to do things, otherwise you have to do it yourself. For example, when I first started auditing, and if you wanted to work at EY and you work here, the first thing you'll start working on is the cash account, because it's the simplest account, because you're sending out the bank confirmation, you're not doing too many samples, etc. But then as you move up, you're doing the more complex account, which can be the expenses, the P&L stuff, and the accruals, etc. So when I first started working on cash, the senior accountant had to show me how to do the cash, and then over time, you start working on more complex things. So you have to show the person beneath you how to do things. So when the intern came to Coke, I had to show them how to do the cash account. I showed them how to do the payables account, etc., etc. But the thing is, if I don't show them how to do it, then I have to do it myself. So it's really in everyone's best interest to sort of push that information down. Otherwise, you have to do more people's work. So the managers show me how to do accruals. I show the intern how to do cash and receivables, etc., etc. So it's inherent in the work, in the sort of the structure of EY, that you're so much on the job training, because if I tell you, no, I'll copy this to here, you'll do it, but you won't understand, and you'll come back with me, 5 minutes later with a different question. But if I explain to you, what are you trying to do here by doing this, this test of how are we going to test this cash account to understand how it works, then that's sort of the on the job training that I'm talking about. So sorry, to answer your question, there's no specific training, but it's just going to be inherent in what we do. Like there'll be bits, because like I think that's the thing about EY is like we have training days where you're doing some technical training on bits and pieces, but like with any training, and even with a degree, there's so many things to learn. It's when you're actually working on a job, and it's specifically like the manager's like, I need you to do this, then learning an IFRS standard is probably going to provide a little bit of information, but actually going through the account and understanding what the client's trying to do, that's probably the more useful part.
Thank you, David. I'm curious, like, how is the working environment at EY? Does auditor worker has a lot of time to overtime? Or I've heard that there's a distinguish between busy season or sometimes it's not too busy.
Yep. Okay. So working in Sydney, at least, Sydney is one of the tougher offices. EY Sydney is the biggest office, so that's and being a big city, we definitely work, I think, very hard compared to some of the other offices. So for example, when I was just talking to my friend at Deloitte Hobart, I think their hours are better, because generally smaller offices have nicer hours. And talking to my friend in EY Canberra, they have nicer hours. So in Sydney, it's probably you're working the most. So in terms of during the busy season, like the more senior you get, the more you work as well. So when you first start, like you can see now, most of the graduates probably work from probably like 9 to 5 or 6, I think. But as they progress from graduates to accountant level 2 to accountant level 3, seniors, they're going to start working longer because they have a higher expectation, more responsibility. So yeah, you will be working more. During the busy season, I have been working a lot. I probably work from 8 to 6, or sometimes 8 to 8. So there is a high expectation. Well, not an expectation, but you do need to work a lot. And just more as you get more senior as well. Obviously, if you want to finish at 5 o'clock every day, like 9 to 5, then it probably won't look so great for you realistically, because your peers who'll be working longer, they'll be progressing faster. So it's hard to promote someone who isn't yeah, I suppose the point is, if you the more you work, the more you're learning, and then sort of to keep up the pace of everyone else is getting promoted, you sort of do need to work more. So it is a high performance, really intense environment where everyone's here is trying to get to the next level, which is why they're here. Otherwise, the thing is, I suppose that's why a lot of people leave, for once you realize that, oh, okay, I don't want the partner lifestyle, I don't want to work that much, I want to have a bit more work-life balance, then you leave. But if most people here come stay for 2-3 years and get to senior 1 sort of thing, or senior 2, or if they really don't like it, they leave straight away, which is fine. But I guess that's why it's a good reputation for us, because you come here and you're working a whole lot. But yeah, that's the trade-off. So the reason you're developing so fast, because you're learning a whole lot, but also because you're working a lot as well. So yeah, the work-life balance isn't that great, I think. But yeah, it's a trade-off.
Yeah, but it's still a good thing to learn, especially in young age. And I'm curious about what is auditing team daily routine? Like, how is auditing team morning routine to have a meeting and to chat with clients? Or
Yep. So normally depending on what, normally the managers normally want to have like a daily meeting, so you sort of just check in, see how you're going, and I guess obviously your audit experience really does depend a lot on what team you're on, because some managers are better, or you might have better personality. If you have a personality clash with other team members or managers, which I haven't had before, but my teams have always been pretty good. So like you come in, you say, oh, we're working on this, this is a problem here. Or they might say, oh, okay, you've got too much work, let's give some to someone else, sort of thing. So yeah, a daily check-in. We normally go to the client site generally maybe twice a week. So you'll be traveling to the client, and the reason of that is easier to ask questions instead of having to do emails, and you can talk to the client. It's a lot easier to get that information crossover. But now, because of the coronavirus, a lot of audits are done completely online as well. So for example, I haven't gone to the client site for probably maybe six months, just because the client normally works from home and it's far away. So the director of our team decided we just work remotely. So yeah, it depends.
Yeah, that's really good that you give us a brief and the detail about what the auditing team normally do, and it gives us a better understanding, and especially for graduates, we can to determine whether auditor role is for us or not, or whether we can try to apply it. Yeah. Does anyone has the question want to ask David?
David, hi, nice to see you. Just a quick question regarding the popular topics in the accounting industries. Do you think the ChatGPT will potentially impact on the future auditings? Yeah.
I mean, I've heard of ChatGPT people using ChatGPT to write accounting memos. So an accounting memo is when you need to explain something. So for example, you might need the client might have a policy about writing inventory off. So if they're fast-moving consumer goods company and they buy inventory and it's over 2 years old, then they write it off. So they expense it out, which you might consider that a bit weird, or you might not necessarily weird, but you might want to write some more detail on it. So when the partner who comes to review it and they say, oh, why is everything being written off for? In the accounting memo, you can detail they're writing it off because the client has assessed the inventory. The nature of the client is fast-moving consumer goods, so it means they need to have a high turnover. We assess their accounting policy, and it's in line with the IFRS standards. So you have to write the policy. So instead of writing that from scratch, you potentially could use ChatGPT to write that. But yeah, I'm not really sure. Really, I'm not super across ChatGPT.
Okay, thanks. Because I'm just heard of the other accounting firm, they are facing like the huge of the laying off the employees because they utilize the GPT, and especially the KPMG recently using the ChatGPT for their chatbots to enhance their customers' experience. So they don't need a lot of the stuff at the moment. So do you think the auditing the groups are facing the same issues at this stage?
Yeah. I don't think auditing, maybe, I don't know maybe for consulting or what are the other service lines are using ChatGPT for. Like I can see it's useful in, if you need to write a memo on things, but it's not something we're doing in auditing a whole lot. Like we're more going through we obtain the journal entries, select the samples, get the support for the samples as well. I hope ChatGPT could help us, because that'd be great in terms of reducing our workload for sure, and getting rid of the more admin jobs and letting us do the proper auditing. But I can't really think off the top of my head how ChatGPT could really help that much. So I think the impact to audit won't be that strong, is my view.
Thank you, David.
That's really great. David, what do you think are the most important skills our graduates need to have when they try to apply for EY graduate program, especially for auditing team?
Again, I don't think there'd be anything unique to auditing that you wouldn't have in a professional skill set, whether you wanted to go for any sort of job. but if I was going to apply for EY, what I would include is maybe just a brief understanding about auditing and, you know, why you want to audit, why auditing appeals to you. Yeah, why it appeals to you, which is probably the answer is like, oh, you want to understand how the companies work. That's about it, really. You can mention you pay attention to detail when you're like talking to people. You want to, yeah, communication. Yeah, I can't really think of anything super specific, to be honest.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just like the basic the softer skills. So
Yeah,
what
that's
you are
right.
looking for. Yeah.
I suppose if you go into an interview, like you want to show that you're interested in auditing sort of thing, you don't mention you want to move to consulting or you want to move to strategy. Like you don't say that. But just, yeah, you express interest in auditing, show that, you know, it's good to do some things out of work as well. So, yeah, so do some things out of work. Yeah, just try and be yourself, but, you know, yeah, do some research on the company beforehand, etc. Like probably the biggest news at the moment is the EY potential split between consulting and strategy and audit. That's probably the biggest piece of news at the moment. So there's lots of things to read about that, but just show, you know, you understand a little bit how audit works, etc. About the news going on. That's a good way to show that you're interested in the industry as well.
Thank you, David.
Mm.
Is there any mates want to ask David about what they're looking for? The questions, especially for auditing.
Hi, David. Do you think working at a big office is relatively better than working at a small office? If you're working at a small office, sometimes you have to be the all-rounder, knowing a bit more than necessary. But working for a big company, it has a big team that can handle some side jobs to do.
Yeah, I can answer that. I mean, I know some of my, I think my audit buddy, she recently joined from BDO actually, so it's the mid-tier. So I think it's different culturally, I think a little bit, like, because obviously EY's, I think one of the, you know, probably maybe the second biggest audit size in terms of, yeah, we're the second biggest auditor after PwC, I think. But also PwC focused a lot more on financial services audit, as opposed to we have financial services and also a non-financial services auditor. PwC has a bigger FSO component. We have a bigger non-FSO component. So you definitely, I think working in a big office, you're more specialized. When I say that, I mean I work on the SOX work, which is really heavy in controls testing. So every US company pretty much has to have a SOX framework, which is really heavy controls testing. So that's probably my specialty in terms of is US SOX control testing. Where if I was working at not necessarily just at a smaller firm where I probably wouldn't have the opportunity, probably like I know accountants that do join, one of the seniors that recently joined EY, he was from a smaller firm and he worked half his time on audit and half his time on consulting as well. So you have that sort of split. And obviously there's pros and cons to both. Yeah, like you can, yeah, there's definitely pros and cons to both. One thing I'd probably mention as well, that an interesting thing that recently came to audit was some of the grads is doing rotations within other audit divisions. So we have obviously our core audit, but we also have our forensics team and financial advisory. So some of the graduates are doing rotations around the different parts of the business, which is actually pretty interesting. But then again, it's like to be a specialist in one area, you have to spend the most time in it. And like when I was before coming to EY as an auditor, I was staying on a grad program at Downer Group, which is an ASX company, and you do rotations every 6 months in different parts of the business. So that means you get to try lots of different things, but in terms of really specializing in one area, you don't have that. So you get more experience, but also it depends. There's not really a right or wrong. It depends what you want, I think. Obviously, if you want to be, you know, an audit partner and you want to do nothing else, then it's probably best to do audit and, you know, really follow the path straight up. But then it's so hard to know what people want as well. Including myself, it's like what area do I want to go in? So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And then this following question is, since you mentioned that you're auditing the US companies as well, does it mean that you have to study GAAP, US GAAP, and
No,
then you have to?
No, it doesn't. It's just a different style of auditing in terms of like the controls testing we do. That's probably the biggest difference there. Like, I think things like applying the technical accounting standards isn't something we really do in audit, because in terms of the more basic stuff, then yes, we should know it. Like IFRS, those sort of bits and pieces, we know that, and we can rely on our internal, I guess, dictionary to check if an IFRS is being applied correctly. But we also have things like the audit quality team, who sort of, if we have a more technical accounting issue, we can ask them about it. But like, I wouldn't, probably in a day-to-day, there's not a huge difference between GAAP and IFRS that really changes our auditing approach. So when you're testing, when you're testing a revenue account for a US company or an Australian company, there's not a whole lot of difference. It's just, yeah, you still select the samples, you still, trace the invoice, it goes to bank account. It doesn't change much there.
Yeah, thank you. And my last question is,
no, ask as many as you want.
because I applied for all the graduate program from Big Four companies, then some companies, they kind of specify, okay, they divide it into many service lines within the audit team. And I just wonder what kind of services the audit team has. Let's say that we've got external audit, internal audit, and financial audit, etc., etc. And then just have no idea what's the differences between.
Okay. I might actually share a slide right now, or share a web page. I'm just looking at the EY website. Okay, this isn't the one I really wanted, but that's all right. Okay, so if we just look at assurance, this isn't really the slide I wanted to show, but it's all right. It'll be okay. So there's all these different types of teams under the assurance banner. So you've got audit, which is normally doing external audit or internal audit. External audit's what I do, and most people at EY will be doing, where you're going as an external auditor, you're checking out the company, you have to sign off on the financial statement saying at the end of the day, do we have an unqualified opinion? Do we have a modified opinion, etc., etc.? How do we provide assurance over the financial results? Internal audit will normally, I think that probably almost be in a consulting, because you're going into the company, you're helping them do their internal auditing. And an example of that is when I was working on some of the clients I work on, we work with the internal audit teams who are normally outsourced to another company. So in this case, we were working with PwC, who were working as the internal auditors on behalf of the client. So if you're working internal audit, I think you might be working consulting, but it's working on the controls. So you're sort of doing the same things, but it is kind of different as well. The other audit teams that we have in Sydney, at least, is the climate change and sustainability. This is like this is probably one of the new areas, which is actually pretty interesting. So it's where you're doing more about away from financial services audit, but more on things you're auditing things such as, or trying to you'd work on like carbon credits, for example. That's one area they work on, as well as how when a company says, oh, how are we adhering to the Modern Slavery Act, which is like a piece of legislation that affects pretty much any like medium-sized company in Australia, at least. How are we like meeting that supply chain standard, and making sure that we're adhering to our legal requirements as per modern slavery. Digital audit, this is where you're sort of working on. So one of my friends works in this team. She's working on, she does a lot of work in Ultrex and sort of making sure how our audit tools developing. So so we're having to do less sort of, less admin work, and we can rely on our audit tools more. So one of our audit tools is called General Ledger Analyzer, where the client gives us all their general ledger information, and we have a tool that spits it out into saying this account goes here, this account posts into our cash, it's related to our receivables account, related to our revenue account. So by selecting this revenue journal, we can see what all the other accounts is impacting. So sort of just improving our ability to do audits. Financial accountant advisory. So this is where it's almost like consulting a little bit, where the client would say, oh, we've got a tricky accounting piece that we're not really sure how to do, because we normally do day-to-day stuff, but in terms of we're going to acquire this company, or we're going to we need to impair this asset. How should we do this? Or how do we adhere with the accounting standard? So this is where this part of the area. Forensics is integrity. So this is actually, again, a specialized area where like, I suppose you're doing some of the more forensic aspects of the audit. And financial services where I think this is sort of similar to this as well. But yeah, that's sort of all the different branches of it as well. Just under the audit umbrella, and obviously you've got all the other umbrellas as well. So yeah.
Thank you.
There's a lot of choice we can apply for. What do you think makes EY to be more attractive to you compared to other Big Four companies?
Yep. Okay. I'll tell you something a little bit funny. So talking to some of the Sydney graduates, apparently if you're normally, like I say, coming out of New South Wales University, your first choice in the Big Four is generally going to be PwC because they're the biggest. Then after that, if you want to work in audit, it's, PwC or EY. Our sort of selling point is our audit quality is the best. So we're specialist auditors in a way, where something like for Deloitte, they're more specialists in consulting. They've got a really strong consulting practice, and KPMG have a pretty good deals practice, I think, is what I heard. So it's sort of a little bit depends on what the speciality is, but we're known for our audit qualities, where our probably biggest strength is, and the fact that we're looking to split. You might have read in the AFR, we're looking to split our audit practice from consulting and strategy is just showing that we're really an audit first company, as opposed to say Deloitte, where I think they're really not as big in the audit space as us. But their consulting is a lot bigger than ours. So it just depends. Yeah. But as a graduate, like, it doesn't really matter, to be honest. They're all good. And that being said, I would like to add that, Big Four is just one career path. Like, I had a really good time working in my other company, in the ASX company. So it doesn't really matter. But so I guess I'm sharing what my life is, my experiences with EY now.
Yeah, each firm has their specialty. Could you tell us about what's the benefits of EY offer to their employees? For example, like their networking events or food and drinks provider each week?
Let's see. So we used to have Friday drinks, but we don't have that anymore. I guess some of the non-monetary benefits are normally we have at the end of every audit, we have an audit celebration event. So we might go to a restaurant sort of thing, like a nice restaurant, or you might go, normally a nice restaurant's probably the after you finish the audit, everyone's done a good job, everyone's pretty happy, you can go to a restaurant to celebrate. There's also things such as we have training days every now and then, where you have everyone has a day booked to their training. So we all the accountants go into a room and we do a meeting together, or if someone presents and tell us about an accounting standard or interpersonal skills. So we have a few of those. Study leave, which is, that's honestly pretty standard amongst most companies, I think. And that's about all. That's probably the major ones I can come to think of it. I guess a lot of it is designed to build culture. So we have an end of busy season, we have a sort of, a celebration event for end of busy season, like we might go to the zoo or a Luna Park or something like that. So there's just a couple of bits and pieces, but ultimately, you shouldn't really consider them as the reason to join audit. They should kind of be for nice things that we have extra.
Thank you so much. It explains a lot to us. What's the auditing team daily routine and what's the benefits we can get. And do we have any other mates want to ask David more questions? Eva has asked a question.
Hi, David. I asked you a question. When applying the EYGP, our grad program, do we need student working visa? So, do we need to have permanent resident citizenship? I don't think you do. I'm not sure about this. I just know that some of the graduates they worked remotely for the first half of their careers, or first 6 months, because I know one of the girls, she was actually from UTAS as well, and she had to work remotely from TAS to get her PR first. So I don't think you need to have it. But obviously it makes it a lot easier if you do have it, because it makes it a lot easier if you do have it first. But don't let that hold you back. I'm not really sure. I'm not sure what does IELTS PTE mean. How is the criteria for international students? Yeah, I actually don't know what that means. Sorry.
Those are the English tests.
Oh, okay. No, I'm not sure. Yeah.
And David, do you think it's easy for you to move to other department, like different service line, like from the auditing to the advisory role?
It's probably not so easy to. Not really. Like yes and no. Like if I wanted to move into EY transactions, it'd be possible, but it'd be fairly hard. I'd almost be off better. Yeah, it's possible, but yeah, doing an internal move is probably pretty hard. But say if I was going to apply at KPMG transactions, it'd probably be easier, I think.
I think for this question, which is just means to ask your English language as the proficient, and I think the EY's website and PwC website or whatever else Big Four company, they do have the language requirements and it's published on their webpage. So if you guys want to check, you can go to the official page and see the details about that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's a good response, Veronica. I think ultimately, if you say, those sort of things will be found out when you get to during the interview anyway, sort of thing. Like if you can, can you maintain the conversation, those sort of things can be assessed later. Like obviously, you don't have to have perfect, because we have international hires all the time, like people from Philippines, France, China, etc., and they're not native English speakers, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but those sort of things can be assessed during an interview, I think.
Thank you. I think for these questions, if we want to apply for the EY, we have to complete the English language test in last 24 months and to achieve the proficient level of English. And for the visa requirements, I think for whether the working visa subclass of 485 or the skilled independent immigration subclass 189 visa, they are both accepted by EY.
Cool. Yeah. I think that's almost more of a HR question, HR statement.
Yes,
really,
yes,
I
I
don't
know.
I feel like those sort of things are done by the HR, not by the audit team. So yeah, I can't comment on those.
Sorry, Veronica, I have a question. You mentioned the visa, you accepted the 485. How about 500, the student visa? Because it's open for graduate students.
I'm not very sure, but I'm currently using the 500 student visa, and I try to apply to EY as well. So I think it can be accepted as well. And you can go to the EY official website to double check whether can be accepted.
Yeah, because my application is still going progress. It's after I finish the assessment. It's still in progress, so I don't know.
Yeah, me too. Good luck with your
good luck.
application.
Hi, David. Does EY have the international transfer program? Let's say that you want to work for the EY in the US and then for a couple of years, and then it's kind of easy to internally move to the other office in a different country. EY has offices around the world.
Yeah. Again, so I know from experience, because like for example, my manager is French and he came from EY France. It's international transfers it's a thing that it exists, but it's almost easier to, if you want to go work in US, EY US, it's easier to just yeah, probably the short answer to that is yes. You know, normally what happens is, you know, if you want to say, if I really want to work in US, I'd tell my partner, say like, I really want to move to the US sort of thing. Can you put me in touch with one of the US partners? And normally the partner will talk to the other partner, and then you can apply and get a job that way. That's probably the easiest way. So it's just like the EY partner knows someone from Australia partner, and they talk to each other and say, oh, okay, this guy, he's done a good job. Yeah, he'll be a good fit, because they know you've had the audit skill set. It's not going to be, you have to do some different things, but it's not going to be dramatically different. You know how the audit works, you know how to do the testing, the samples, etc. Yeah, so that's, from that point of view, it's pretty easy, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Hi guys, please check the link I have just sent, and I think it's contain a lot of important points in this link. You guys can check. Thank you.
Hi.
Hello?
Well, hello. Where I could find the recording?
Hi Chloe. I think she's mentioned about the recording of this webinar.
Do you mean the recording of this webinar, Zoe?
Yeah.
So I'm recording it at the moment, and I'm planning to upload it in the coming days. I'll post on Facebook on our Tubes page when I do, but I'm planning to get it up this week.
Okay. So where I could find it?
So I'll post it once it's done and uploaded. I'll post on the Tubes Facebook page with the link to watch the recording of this.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries. Does anyone have any final questions for David before we wrap up?
Yes, I've got a ton of questions, to be honest. Hi,
Oh,
David,
great.
where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? I know that a lot of the auditors from Big Four, they normally, when they become an assistant manager or something like that, and then they move to the private or just a smaller company with a higher salary. And then do you also follow that path?
That's right, yeah. No, I can explain that pretty well. So I can tell you how the rank structure works at EY a little bit as well. So, you know, there's all these different ranks. You normally, some people start at intern, some people start at A1. So it goes sort of intern, associate, senior, associate, manager, senior manager, and partner. It's director then partner. So it's like you normally stay in about maybe 2.5 to 3 years at each rank. So we start as like an A1, accountant level 1, get promoted to accountant level 2, accountant level 3, and each year you have like a little jump in salary normally. And then same with senior 1, senior 2, assistant manager. So, and then, you know, manager, senior manager, director. So everyone normally starts as an accountant, and yeah, you know, depending on how well you do each year, you sort of get to the next rank and you get more responsibility, you get more work, you get a bit more money as well. So right now I'm an associate level, so I'll probably go into senior, probably hopefully the next maybe 6 months, I imagine, or a bit less. See how it goes. And then from as a senior, you've got more responsibility, etc. So what I'd probably be looking to do personally is to get to senior first, and then sort of see where I go from there. Obviously, yeah, probably I'd like to try and get to probably manager, I think, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. And you know, if it turns out next year, or I really don't like it anymore, or I feel like it's a bit too much, then I might jump into private sector, or for me back to private sector, because like that's where I came from. And yeah, where the work-life balance should be, you know, the work-life balance should be a bit better and the pay should be a bit higher. But I guess the reason everyone's, you know, sticking around in audit when, as I said, the work-life balance, you probably have to work a bit more and the pay isn't quite as good, is because you're learning so fast, and it's the way the environment is designed to you're always learning stuff, because I said it sort of filters down when you have to show the people beneath you how to do things. So it's sort of like that environment where you're learning really quickly, and hopefully when you want to quit, or when you decide it's probably not, you don't want to be a partner or something like that, then you can go get a job in private sector. So I think for me, over the next 3 years, I'd probably stay in audit. Then I might try and get to audit senior first. Then I could go, maybe I'd like to do a secondment in strategy for a bit, just to see what it's like. Otherwise I'll just keep on trying to get to maybe audit manager. And then if I, see if it's like, oh, maybe the lifestyle isn't really what I was liking. Because I did say it is an intense lifestyle. It is quite an intense lifestyle, especially in Sydney audit. And then maybe go back to private sector if I want to have a bit more balance. But right now I'm sort of, I'm happy to keep working, and like I said, I'm learning a lot, working a lot. It's good. So it depends what kind of lifestyle you want, for sure.
Thank you.